to this computer. Hi, and welcome everyone to the Fredericton, New Brunswick meet and greet. It's so nice to be meeting with everybody just across the Bay of Fundy. And if we go out to Digby Neck, I can actually almost see New Brunswick across, as long as it's not foggy. It's been quite foggy in the mornings lately. I'm Judy Green. I'm leadership contestant for the Green Party of Canada. I'm the only Atlantic Canadian contestant and come from Mi'kma'ki, which is here, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia. I have the pleasure of living very close to Elsipkook, which is Bear River, and having a close relationship with many friends in that community who have been amazing teachers for me and have helped me really form my approach to Indigenous, being an Indigenous ally. And it is always a learning experience as we go forward, of course. So I was born in British Columbia, in Princeton, BC, and I have traveled all the way across Canada. I come from a military family and was in the military myself as an aircraft mechanic. I was recruited into the military out of Calgary and served some time there until I met my husband and we got married. He's from Nova Scotia, but we were posted to Edmonton. So I've lived in 5 different provinces across Canada. I started as an airframe technician. I've done an undergrad in computer science at Acadia University, did my master's, another Acadia alum here, woohoo, yay Kathy, and did my master's at Carleton University in Ottawa, where I worked in high-tech startups for about 10 years. And then I launched myself into a series of small businesses that I ran, including being a software consultant for oil and gas companies in Alberta, which was quite interesting, has given me a strange perspective. So my friend and financial agent, she's been my official agent on 2 campaigns now as a financial agent for our EDA here in West Nova. And she says that I may not have chosen politics, but politics chose me. And that's really sums it up, because I've always come into it, even here in West Nova, after really being polarized with the IPCC report in the fall of 2018. I was giving the talks heading towards extinction for Extinction Rebellion. I do, in my businesses, I do a lot of teaching and seminars and that sort of thing. So that was a skill I could bring to it. And it also gave me the opportunity to really dig deep into the science, which the scientist in me really, really loved. And so I was doing those talks when we had hints that the federal election was going to happen. I had joined the Green Party of Nova Scotia just that early in that fall, and was preparing to, help on somebody's campaign, having had no political experience, and that someone never showed up. So I put my name in, and in June I started my campaign with $36 in the bank account, and the previous candidate, who hadn't been involved at all for 4 years, hadn't even answered a Green Party email. And that's where we started. So friends and people that I had worked with in the work that I've been doing with food security and anti-poverty activism and affordable housing here in this area of the world really rallied around me. And we put on a fairly credible campaign where we took the vote from 4.1% to 12.67%. We came in 3rd. We won the student vote, which I'm inordinately proud of, because they are the future indeed. And learned a lot along the way. Did we make mistakes? Absolutely. But did we learn from it? Yes. And do we have a plan going forward? Absolutely, yes. So some of those experiences, I wanted to see if other campaigns were having similar issues, or if theirs were different, or if there was something we could learn. So I started reaching out to other candidates who had run campaigns, and started learning from them that we had similar circumstances, and there was a pattern that we started to see. And going forward, it was very clear that there were certain problems upstream that needed to be resolved. And that's when I got involved with Tom and Maureen and a few others on EDA 2.0, where we wrote a proposal to Federal Council recommending a transition director, where we were between executive directors, because it was really clear that there was some organizational and structural challenges, including communication challenges within the party and within the staffing that really needed to be addressed and that were holding us back. And that was a wonderful opportunity to meet really active Greens and connect with Greens all across Canada. And so I've just kept doing that. And when the announcement came for Elizabeth May stepping down, I was just really interested in what people were looking for in new leaders. So I had posted in a few places, and I think the party itself should have done this, but we posted in a few places asking if you were to put together a job description for the next leader of the Green Party of Canada, what would it look like? And it was really quite interesting how many of those requirements, my very odd, strange, eclectic background, non-political background, how many boxes that checked. And so I realized that at the end of all of this amazing life that I've had, I've collected this tool belt of tools and skills that is what the party needs uniquely at this moment in time. And the irony is that if I'd planned to go into politics, I wouldn't have perhaps chosen the same path of education or work. So it's quite interesting how life evolves sometimes. And so here we are. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate with you tonight. So David, did you have specific questions, or do people just would like to, you know, unmute your mic and ask questions and we'll just have a chat? I know I have my teacup here.
Sure, I'll start it off. I think it was a Zoom event with Elizabeth, and you had talked about sort of liaisons between EDAs and international Green Party bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be where Green parties have writing associations. I don't know how they're structured,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe you could talk about that. I'm quite interested.
Well, that really comes from that investigation, because it seemed that everybody, well, the vast majority of the people that I spoke to, especially those in new ridings that weren't large and established, really felt that they were on their own and that they didn't have anyone they could ask questions of or had that institutional knowledge. And right next door to us, we have Annapolis Royal. And Annapolis Royal is twinned with a city in France. And so they have a very specific twinning program for towns and cities in different countries to twin with other towns and cities in other countries. That really helps to, and it has a structure to it. It's not just like pen pals. It has a structure to it that helps assist both sides understand where the commonalities are, where they can support and help each other, and where they can learn from each other. And I think, you know, the Green Party has this amazing network of over 80 countries where we have elected Greens. Why are we not listening to each other and learning from each other? You know, as a computer scientist, I hate copying and pasting. I hate starting from scratch. You know, let's reuse and learn from each other. And what a great way to do that is to have a structured program so that we can have an international Greens twinning program. So that we can share that information. And internally, what I'd love us to do is actually have a mentoring program, EDA to EDA, or it might be a Green Party member who has had a lot of experience within the party, has a lot of institutional knowledge, may not want to be sitting as an executive in their EDA at this point in time, but wouldn't mind being a mentor to another EDA. And so really setting up a mentoring program as well. because I really think one thing that we do not do well, that we have to do well if we want to grow this organization, is we have to grow leaders from within. And that means providing them with the support and connections that they need in order to succeed.
I guess I'm going to ask you to sing Stand Up and Cheer.
Yeah.
It's my ringtone for my phone.
Oh, excellent. Acadia.
So I'm really impressed with that mentoring idea and the connection, because when I joined the Green Party, I thought I was joining a movement.
Yes.
And part of it that I'm not impressed with is how it's about winning and that sort of stuff. They've sort of thrown those things that they were told me that that's what they were all about, and are just like, how can we get ahead? How can we be like the Conservatives or the Liberals or the NDP? And for me, I sort of started to wane when we got into this, you know, that competitive stuff going about winning.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, Kathy, that a lot of people feel that way. And that's where we have to understand that we don't have to choose. We can be both. We can take the best out of being a movement, and that includes liaison and working with other NGOs and organizations that are working towards the same goals that we are, and be really adding those voices together, but be the political arm of that. So we need to really embrace our grassroots and really empower our membership, but we also have to have the structure to win, because we're in politics, and so we need to have the structure to win. But we really do need to do politics differently, and we need to define what that means, because we're really good at the lip service of that, but we have been failing lately in being in actually walking that talk. And I think that this is, and I think this is one of the things that we're seeing within the party, is that there is tension between the two groups that want to do things top down, very much like the existing parties, and those who really are have their heart in being a grassroots movement. And how do we reconcile those two aspects of who we are as Greens? And until we get that right, that is going to be holding us back. So we really need to be looking at the best of both. Just like when we say about the transitioning to green energy and a more sustainable economy, so many people say, oh, they want to throw us back into the 1800s. Well, you know, some of those things they were doing in the 1800s are pretty darn good. So let's pull them forward, right? And use them now. And it's the same sort of thing. We need to be pulling things forward from being a grassroots movement into politics that'll strengthen our position in politics and make us so that we are competitive and will win more seats.
I think when elections come along, we just abandon what we were about and think, let's win.
Well, it is, and I think part of it is that we don't do any work in between elections. We go away. Most EDAs, and yes, it's exhausting work. And so taking some time off after the election, absolutely. There's this thing nobody prepared me for. I call it the election hangover. And as a candidate, you are like, it gets down to that last month and you are not even looking at what's happening the next days. Your staff are filling that in for you. You're looking at what's happening hour by hour, and then all of a sudden the election happens and it's like you fall off a cliff because there's nothing happening the next day, and you wake up and you're like, okay, what's next? And it's a bit like an election hangover. So yes, prepare for that and get through that and do the self-care, but then we really have to be looking at what do we need to grow, because what's happening now when we don't do things between elections, we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We can't afford to be incremental. We have to be moving forward all the time. And that means that we need to be attracting people to the party. And we don't do that through boring meetings. We do that by being fun. You know, we do that by going out and doing things in our communities that make a difference, that people see us walking the talk, and that we're helping clean up the community. We're working with, like we have a Clean Annapolis River project. They're always looking for volunteers, even to the point of going in and looking at species that are there, counting turtle hatchings. And there's all sorts of fun things that you can get involved with and have fun doing. And be visible out in the community, really walking the talk. It gives you the opportunity to open that conversation and to be able to say, yes, this is what the Green Party is. We care about our communities and we want to make a difference. That's why we're in it. We're not in it for power or you know, prestige. We're in it because we want to make a difference. We want to learn the right solutions for the problems, which means we have to listen to the science and the evidence, but we also are prepared to take action. And that means locally as well. We need to be training our volunteers and even doing, practicing doing things like, you know, the listening campaign. Listening campaign you can do all year round, every year. You don't have to do it within the writ period. Now, you don't have access to the same level that you do during a writ period. So like locked doors in apartment buildings and such, you don't have access to, but you can still be going to people's doors and talking to them about the issues that are most important to them. And if you live in a rural area like we do here in West Nova, it is physically impossible unless I had 600 volunteers on the ground and who were canvassing every single day. We'd never get to every door because it just takes too long to physically get to the different houses, especially in the more rural areas. And so if we can plan our canvassing to be canvassing all the areas in a listening campaign between elections, encouraging people to come out, learn more about us, you know, maybe come to a social event that we're having, or maybe there is a dragon boat race that we're going to be all working in to raise money for someone else, but we're in the community, showing the community that we care. That's going to raise our profile as Greens. Like, it broke my heart how many people I talked to didn't even know we had a Green Party in our riding here. That we can change that. We can change that by our behavior in between elections, and be fun. Don't burn yourself out, but have fun doing it. And always feed your volunteers. Potlucks are wonderful. Remember, you're building a team, and building a team takes time because you have to build trust. And trust doesn't come when you're sitting around a table negotiating or arguing about policy. Trust comes from learning about each other. Trust comes from doing things together, and that takes time. And we have that time between elections. So it's really important that we look at things a little bit differently in terms of how we do politics. Building teams is what I did my master's thesis on, and so it's one thing that I see us really lacking. And another is that I think we need more training with understanding and having realistic expectations around volunteers and volunteerism. You know, it's not the same as having an employee. People's lives happen and they blow up on them, and they have best intentions, and you have to learn the ebb and flow of managing volunteers and how to grow volunteers. So many times I hear people who've reached out to Green Party EDAs in between elections, and basically nobody even returned a call to them. You know, that's when we need to be recruiting people. When someone reaches out, give them a job to do. They have to have a job to do that they can succeed at. And then you give them a bigger one that they will succeed at. And then you give them one that they has to work with somebody else and work together to get it accomplished. We have to grow our volunteers, grow our members, grow our leaders from within. And we can be doing that all year round, not just at election time. And if we do that, we will have teams ready to go on the ground when the writ drops. And we won't be scrambling like we have in the past.
Thank you. That's my philosophy too. Thank
Excellent. You. Excellent.
I think here in Fredericton, the reason we win elections is because we are a movement.
Yes.
We are not just the Green Party. We are the people. We are the environmentalists. We're the people for social justice. Yep. We're the feminists. We're the Indigenous people, and we're the people for gender equality, okay, or gender orientation equality. And those people have come together, and we are the movement, okay? Yes, when we have elections, we have to find money and we have to find volunteers and so forth. But we have a lot of fun doing that. However, in terms of what we need from a leader, in my opinion, okay, is what Elizabeth gave us was that she had some sort of a voice of authority. And I think that's the reason that we have a minority government today, is because Trudeau was saying he was for a green revolution, but he was only going a fraction of the distance.
That's right.
And Elizabeth, with her authority, was able to call him out on that. And that's why he didn't win in the majority government, in my opinion. Okay. The other thing is, in terms of when she came to campaign here, it was a great boost for us. The other person that came to campaign here was David Suzuki, and that was a great boost for us. Okay. Now, one of the candidates who is running and said, "Well, I'm not famous like that." And we don't expect people to be famous, but we do expect you to get that public exposure to be that authority to help us, because that authority about what is true in terms of a green revolution, we have to have a voice that knows what they're talking about. I'm just wondering what you would speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely, Norm. I completely agree with you. And that's where being a scientist really helps. You know, having those credentials really helps, because people know that I'm able to read through these reports and understand the scientific process, and I have faith in what we're being told, and can also look down the road and see how things are changing, and how you know, even now, like Mission Possible was a good plan last year. It has to be updated, because what's happening is that the ice sheets are melting faster than expected. We have more methane being released because the permafrost is melting faster than expected. So all of this data, all of these data points have changed. And so we have to be even more aggressive. And on top of that, our CO2 emissions are not decreasing, they're increasing. And we've had a short little blip because of COVID-19, but it's getting right back to rising again. And that is extremely concerning, because we don't have time. And I agree with you, Norm. You have to have the science behind you. You have to be able to speak in an authoritative manner, and you have to hold the Liberals and the other parties to task and put their feet in the fire if necessary, in order to show that they're not going far enough, that they're paying lip service, and it's not enough, and we expect more. And we have to have more if we're going to meet these targets and these goals. Thank you for that question, Norm. Other questions?
Yeah, I'll chime in. Nobody else wants to right now.
Sure.
There's a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about that actually popped up. One was I totally agree that you need to build trust in teams, and potlucks is a great way to do it. Kind of tough to do that right now.
It is indeed.
And of course, there's all kinds of varying opinions about when a vaccine is going to be available that would actually allow us to go back to some kind of normal. But I guess my first question would be, how do we do that, given that most of our meetings are like this, even in the same writing, most of our meetings are remote. And actually, I'll just stop there. So yeah, one question at a time.
No, that's a really good question, Tom, because we really have to look outside the box. And I think all of the world is looking at vaccines as being a silver bullet, and the epidemiology and the experts in this area really are telling us that it's not. With the way they're expecting a good efficacy rate for a vaccine would be 50%. So 50% of the people who get the vaccine would have some form of protection. And they still don't know how long those antibodies are protective. So they're seeing antibodies in people for 4 or 6 months, but they don't know how long they're actually protective. So there's still so much about this vaccine that we do not know, that there's going to be a lot of trying to manage that as well, without people feeling completely overwhelmed. But for our teams, we need to be really creative, very creative. Like here in Nova Scotia, we started doing town halls, but what we do is we have people gathering in smaller groups with the Zoom, where there's one spokesperson for the group who can speak or ask questions for the group in each of different locations. So it's like a Zoom call, but with clusters of people rather than singles, but singles can be joining as well. This is really important in areas that have rural internet. I have members on my team that can't even attend our Zoom team meetings because the rural internet is so bad they can't attend Zoom meetings. So we have to make sure that we're not leaving people out. And yes, they can phone in to hear, but you need to have some combination of both. And sometimes just the organizational stuff can be done online, and then in smaller local clusters, you can get out and do things that are more local. One of the things that we did during the campaign as a fundraiser was a 10 for 10, which was a $10 donation from one person would result in 10 minutes of beach cleanup or roadside cleanup at different locations. So we nominated different locations throughout our riding, and we had people sign up to do the cleanups. We had people sign up to donate. And so it could be the same people, it could be different people, but it allowed it in a structure that allowed it to be fun. And it meant that we weren't having people traveling all from one area to go to one beach cleanup, and people could do it at their own time and schedule. And it worked exceptionally well. And during this pandemic, where we're not able to cluster in large groups, doing something like that is fun. It produces a lot of feedback online, because you're showing that you're raising amounts and it's getting towards your goal and that sort of thing. So you have to think outside the box and look at things that work and see how they can be applied to the activities that you want to be involved in as an outreach right now. Like another thing that worked really well for us in terms of exposure was here in Nova Scotia, all through the summer, there are small festivals in the small towns all up and down the riding. So basically from end of May right through to September, you can go to a different festival and a different parade every week. And so that's what we did during the campaign, and it gave us a tremendous amount of exposure. Now, of course, there's no parades during COVID. So there's a whole bunch of things that worked really well for us, but don't work now. But what I'm seeing pop up is that there are, for our first responders, there will be a cavalcade of support. So people driving through with banners and honking and music and stuff, driving through to show support for first responders. So there's some other things that we can do that way, preferably with an electric vehicle if somebody that you know has one, rather than than using internal combustion. But we have to kind of think outside the box, because we were already needing to think outside the box to do things differently, but now it's made it even more challenging. So that's something that you need to look at, what's available in your area, what's happening, see how we can adapt it, because there's lots of people coming up with creative ways of continuing on, making sure that those connections are still happening. I know even in the Apple Blossom Parade, they did an online series for one whole day where they were doing all different things and events throughout the day, had different speakers, had different musical acts, different things like that throughout the day, to try to give people the opportunity to tune in. It was all recorded, so people can watch it afterwards. If I think about something that's worked really well during COVID-19 has been the Facebook group, the Nova Scotia Kitchen Party. And people I don't know, has anybody watched that or heard that? Yeah, because they've been amazingly successful, and it's people go there for happy, uplifting music and to hear, and anybody can post who has any kind of musical talent. And it amazes me how many of my neighbors and friends have talent that they've been hiding from the rest of us. So it's been really nice to see. So, I mean, we could do something like that, Green's talent. Just recently, there was, I think it was Megan Ardyke was involved in organizing it, where we had, now this requires like a full Zoom version that allows you to have breakout rooms. but where they had different people in different rooms teaching or showing different things or different ways of doing things. It would be really fun if we could organize something perhaps with the head office's Zoom, where they have those breakout rooms, where we could be teaching how to do the folding for the envelopes and the stickers, so that you can be handing out packets of seeds when you are out doing different events. You know, just different things that different EDAs have done over the years that have that we could be sharing those information. You know, just an idea off the top of my head. But if we were to just kind of think about some things like that, we have to be really creative right now. Nobody's done this before, so it's all new. Some things will work and some won't, and that's okay. We learn from them.
I don't see anybody else with a hand up, so I'll go with my second question.
Sure.
One of the things that I think people look for in a leader is obviously ideas, but also inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that a leader be inspirational, and many of the details can then fall to the managers and the troops to make sure they work through. So how do you see yourself inspiring people to work for the Greens, to support the Greens, and to vote for the Greens?
Excellent. Well, you know, I think all of the contestants, we are really very fortunate to have such high quality contestants for the leadership. And I would hope that all of us go on and are elected in the next election. I would love to work in caucus with every one of them. But we need to be looking at how, like, I think part of the problem is that when we have a leader, right now, we want them in Parliament and we want them focused on Parliament, which means that they're not having that focus on the EDAs and supporting the EDAs. So quite frankly, I think that the leader doesn't have the bandwidth to be doing the support at the level it needs to happen at EDAs all the time. I would love to see the I forgot the right word. I keep wanting to say co-leaders because that's where my mind is at. But the like Joanne and
Deputy?
Thank you. Got the right word for me. Yes. So the deputy leaders have more of a role about traveling to EDAs, doing events with the EDAs to get excitement in that area. And of course, the leader to travel there as much as possible. But if we saw how much Elizabeth was on the road, she tried to get as many places as she could. Even when she did the whistle stop, it was just for a few minutes. So I think we need to use the resources we have effectively. And so I see the co-leaders being more active in supporting EDAs in a physical, like being there in place. That also helps to raise their profiles as well, and to have them almost as co-leaders with the party. I think that that's really important, that we look and are working together as a team, and that we are all working towards that same goal of really exciting members in the different EDAs, but also attracting other people into the party in those EDAs, and by doing some bigger fun events that will attract the larger green-minded people. One of the things that really bothered me in the last election is we had so many convergences around the climate crisis, so many people in activism, and yet the numbers didn't translate into those people even voting, never mind voting for Greens. So we need to find a way of really attracting the activist minded people and showing that they have a place in the party as well. And that's what comes back to that earlier conversation, where we really need to be looking at embracing the best of our activist grassroots past, but still being very effective in Parliament and pulling it together. But really it's a bit of a cheerleading job in terms of raising that excitement and awareness across Canada, of reaching out and making those relationships with the NGOs and the others in the area or different areas that are championing the same issues that are important to Greens, being there and talking to the leaders of those groups, building those relationships as well, and then working together on the ground to accomplish the goals that we all want to achieve.
Thank you.
Welcome. And as always, if other people have ideas as to how we need to go with this, we need to hear about them. You know, we need to all be sharing those ideas because one person's not going to have all the solutions, but all of us collectively will come up with the best solutions to these challenges in the time of COVID. Next question.
I heard you talk about some work you did around food security, and I'm very interested in that. My degree from Acadia is in home economics.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Yeah, actually, I've been interested in food security for quite some time. I'm a whole food plant-based chef, and I ran a community kitchen in Digby. There's a group of 4 of us that got together and wrote a proposal and got the mentorship of the Halifax Mobile Food Market, who commandeers a transit bus once a week and travels around to different communities with fresh food and fresh produce into areas that are food deserts and that people don't have access. And so, you know, we had to modify things in a rural area to make it work. But we did create what we call Fresh Food Box. We have Digby, we have interest in Yarmouth as well. This year we weren't able to do it because of COVID. And it put fresh fruit and vegetables, mostly local. And I did learn that in different areas, local means something different. In Digby, local means Digby. Doesn't mean 30 kilometers down the road up the valley. That's not local to Digby residents. So it was really important to do all of that outreach into the community and get those the feedback from the community. And we had some wonderful volunteers that went out and did really coffee clutches with people in the different communities to see what they needed. And then we worked with champions in each of those locations that we did the sourcing and the packing with concert with Conway Workshop, which is a workshop for people with physical and mental disabilities, and they helped us pack the bags. And then we took all of those out to the different regions, and then they distributed there. And so it was kind of like a wagon wheel model where we did the hub in the middle, but then distributed out along the spokes. And that worked exceptionally well for us. And our biggest, every week, our biggest purchases were coming from way out on Briar Island, which is like 2 ferry stops out, so you can imagine they don't have a large farming community out there. So they've actually, the Women's Center that took on being our distributor in that area have now taken on that task and are continuing that program on their own, which is wonderful. You know, that's what I would love to see about all these sorts of programs. But it really works well when we look at issues like that, which are social determinants of health. We need to be making sure that people have the nutrition, the fresh water, and you know, affordable housing, all of those things that so many take for granted, but so many struggle with every single day, and more so during the time of COVID, that we ensure that people have those basic, I consider them basic human rights. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, there was I think it's called the Nilini. You may have heard of it, Kathy, the Nilini Declaration. I think that was in the 90s, the late 90s. And it was an international declaration on food sovereignty. So not just food security, but food sovereignty. And that added the component of not just having access to affordable fresh fruits and vegetables, but that they be appropriate, culturally appropriate. And what is the preference of the people in need? Because so often we will go into, especially other countries, and we'll say, oh, this is what you need to be eating. And they're like, I don't think so, we don't eat that. So it really has to be what that community needs, and being in touch with that. And that's something I think we really need to take forward with solutions in all aspects of some of the solutions that we're suggesting, especially in First Nations communities and Black communities, that the solutions come from within the community, and we are there to help support the implementation of them. If someone else has a question, just unmute yourself. I did want to say what a great, oh, who's there?
Well, I unmuted.
Okay. Awesome. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Judy. I guess just to reflect a little bit, this is a group of very active people who've been engaged in a lot of the movements in New Brunswick and some of us internationally. And why is it that we don't have a lot of questions to ask, and we're sort of leaving empty here for you to fill without questions? Let me try to turn things around. And
Sure.
the problem is ours probably, but this is approaching not the end. I guess that we're going to get another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of candidate discussions, but this started about 3 months ago, or
Yeah.
2 months ago.
I think we're all getting tired.
You've gone through the same thing a lot of times. We've gone through the same thing a lot of times. I noticed that there are about 6 or 7 of us around, smaller groups, so it's not a webinar. We're not large enough for a webinar to ask somebody to talk to us for unlimited time, trying to invent things to say to us. On the other hand, we don't seem to be inclined to ask a lot of questions. So let me see if I can turn it around.
Sure.
This might be a bit of a problem since I'm sure you didn't come prepared for this, but try to identify a problem or issue that you feel strongly about that you don't yet have very good solutions for, answers to, and that you would like to consult a small group like this one to work on with you, sort of act as your collective advisory group in this campaign about a direction that you'd like to take, but you'd like to start by asking some questions. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but if it is, give it a thought.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm excited about that question. Especially where all of you have so much more time in the Green Party, much more than I do. And it's boggled my mind why things are done the way they're done in the party to some great degree. And it has gotten to a point where ideas go to federal council, and federal council may even make a determination and a vote on it, and yet those recommendations are not implemented by staff. And we have this breakdown of communication where the communication is no longer two-way. Party members don't even have a clear understanding of the structure of the party and don't see a clear path on how they can get involved in the party, or where skills can be used. And I'm wondering how it got that way. Was it always that way? Or did something change?
Judy, I'm going to follow up and suggest that use a talking circle, put people on the spot.
Okay, I love it.
But in this simple way, maybe because I'm clockwise, go counterclockwise in this group I've seen on the screen, and ask everybody in turn to comment and wait until they do.
Excellent. Oh, I love it, Charles. I love it. I love it. Excellent. Thank you for giving me that license. Okay, so on my screen, I recognize everyone's screen's different. But Karen, you're the first one to go on my screen. So,
there we are.
What is your experience with the party in terms of all those internal, mind-boggling roadblocks that are within the party? Were they always there, or is that something new? And what would you do about it? So I'm going to unmute you, Karen.
Oh, do you mean Karen here or Karen there? There's a Karen DeWolf and there's a Karen McFadden.
Okay, I've got.
Maybe we're confused.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, I didn't see Karen McFadden, so I'm going Karen DeWolf. Karen DeWolf. All I see is the names here, and it just says Charles. So. Okay.
Yeah, hi. I don't really have any questions for you. I'm just a grassroots supporter. There to do any volunteer work needs to be done, but I don't have any questions.
Okay, but
All right.
sorry, that would be Cindy. She's just decided to let me know her daddy has come in the house. our little Yorkie. So the question was, Karen, is that I'm turning it around so that you each have an opportunity to speak to some of the internal problems that we're having within the party, and what you have seen and what you would like to see, if you have any suggestions on how to fix them.
No, I'm afraid I don't.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot. Okay, Norm, you're next.
Well, I don't see, there is a problem with the structure of the party and the way it's supposed to work, but I don't worry about it because we have an MP and we can talk to her, okay? So, and I don't really care what the policy of the party is. It's a question of the grassroots organizations here having an influence on their MP or their candidate. However, there is a problem there, okay? As I learn more about it, okay? However, I have an additional question, is that of all the more than a dozen people seem to be running for the leadership, they're all extremely highly qualified, and I don't know how we get around to actually deciding. Do you have any hints about how we should pick the person? Because we have a wealth of talents, okay? So how do we deal with that problem?
We do, Norm, you were right. We have 9 people now that you will hopefully have on the ballot. But that depends on fundraising. There's still some of us, that includes myself, that are struggling to reach that $20,000 mark that we have to reach by September. So if you haven't donated yet, please do so. Even $20 doing a renewal of your membership goes a long way. If you do it off of our websites, we do get credit for that. But what I would say, Norm, is the same thing as I say to people here in West Nova when they're talking about which candidate do they choose, or when they're talking about strategic voting. I say, well, what are the top issues? What are the issues that are most important to you, and what is your position on them? Then ask each of the candidates what their position is, and then you align yourself with the person who most closely represents what you want to see on those issues. So, and we have, it's a ranked ballot as well with a none of the above. So there'll actually be 10 options on the ballot. So you get to rank people. So you don't have to just choose one. You can choose right down to 9 and then plus none of the above. Does that help, Norm?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so next, back to that original question is Rhonda. Rhonda, do you want to speak to those internal structural and communication issues within the party? What has been your experience and your impression of that? And perhaps solutions?
Right. I don't really have much to say in that area. I think that there will always be internal issues and things that come up within an organization, especially a national organization where people have lots of different ideas and ways of doing things. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. Sorry. So what I was saying was, yes, that there will always be issues. And I think that, I guess in these meet and greets, I like to hear about different things that that you might tell us about yourself. And there's one question that I usually ask, so I wouldn't mind asking that now, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, great, good. So I think it's very important to see women in positions in politics, and also other minorities and groups that are not usually represented well. And that's a very important issue for me, that our governments do represent the population, and how can we get to that point. So I just wonder what your ideas are on that topic.
Okay, awesome. Well, you know, I think that we need to be encouraging people from all different demographics to be getting involved in politics. And that means getting involved at whatever level they want to be. You know, we have a real big push here. Richard Zarowski has a big voice for, and he's our shadow cabinet member on the climate, but he's also a member on the Halifax Council. And he has, and I agree with him, is that we should be encouraging Greens of all stripe to be involved in politics at whatever level they're comfortable, whether that's municipal, provincial, federal, and making space for them, making a safe space. You know, I did attended a seminar at Dalhousie University at the law school there, where they were talking about really, it was about bigotry and racism in media. And we had the opportunity to speak to people who were involved in the law, of course, and how we are dealing with juvenile offenders in a different way here in Nova Scotia now than we did previously. Understanding that the human brain doesn't fully comprehend consequences until well into the 20s, and so expecting somebody at 17 to have the same comprehension or understanding or ability to make right decisions isn't realistic. And so the law is taking that into consideration now. These sorts of things, especially the legal system, really impacts racialized communities to a larger degree because of the racism in the institution, in the structures. And understanding that and having those conversations is really important, but we really need to learn how to be allies. Speaking as a white woman from a settler background, that we have to take personal responsibility to learn how to be allies for all of these different groups. And yes, I fall into the female category, and we struggle with this too. And of course, social media attacks are getting worse on female politicians, which is making people really want to have nothing to do with it. But if we speak out very loudly en masse against any, I don't care what party they're in, if they're being attacked, we need to all speak out and say, this is not acceptable, full stop, you know, that not acceptable. And this needs to happen anytime racist comments are spoken or slurs against LGBTQ. We have to be loud and proud supporters and advocates. But more than that, we have to make sure that our organizations are safe places for people from these communities. And it really struck me that because I've worked on all sorts of different volunteer boards, and we all want this, we all want a diversity, but we've all failed horribly at getting a reasonable level of diversity. And I don't like tokenism by any stretch of the imagination either. Like a single person representing the views of an entire group is just silliness. So we really need to be making the communities and organizations safer, which means we have to be educating ourselves and understanding that 200, 300, 400 years of oppression by this system is made people really gun shy. Why should they trust us? You know, and it's always bothered me that we say, oh yeah, well, we'll make a place at our table. Well, maybe they don't want to sit at our table. Maybe they don't want to sit at a table at all. Maybe we need to have a conversation with them about what that new safe space needs to look like. So that they feel comfortable and we can all work together in that space. So it really is about getting our heads around it. And this is one of the things that we can do between elections, is really work on those authentic relationships within the communities that are underrepresented in our organizations, and encourage them to come on board and be volunteers and be, you know, the more that we grow leaders within our party, the better. But we also need to be recognizing leaders within these other organizations and approaching them when we do our candidate searches. You know, we approach, you know, somebody from our own racial background or our own peer group, reach out and approach the leaders in these organizations, find out who they are and approach them to see if they might be interested in running. for the Green Party. So we really have to be proactive in reaching out, but also do that inner work and that work on ourselves so that we are good allies and aren't saying things inadvertently. Like so many things that I grew up saying, I never realized were racist. And then we start reading some of the books and stuff and the background on where this term or this phrase came from, and I'm absolutely appalled. And there aren't things that would ever be considered overtly racist, but they are to people who've lived in those communities and have that background and that history. Something as simple as a grandfather clause. You know, a grandfather clause was a way of keeping Black Americans out of voting, because you had to have had your grandfather had to have been able to vote. And so if you never have had a grandfather who've been able to vote, then you can't vote, and then your grandson can't vote, and on and on and on and on. So there's all sorts of structures and such that gets and phrases that get caught up, and we use them in different ways, but their origins are really quite horrific.
Judy, we don't want to be rude. We have to go to another meeting webinar that starts at 8 o'clock, but we'll look forward to more opportunities to get in touch and discuss maybe the question that you raised, and we'll offer you our views on that.
I would love to hear that, Charles. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, we need to be collecting, you know, that knowledge and experience that of Greens that have been in here for a while and have seen the transition. Because honestly, I don't know what the answer to that question is.
No, I think your question was very good. I don't think we do either. We can contribute to it. Since we asked it, we should probably say something to you about it. Anyway, we better do this later.
Okay.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you for coming to the meeting, Judy.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for all the hard work and success that you guys are showing us is possible there in Fredericton, which is awesome.
Yes, it's a unique situation, I think. So we probably aren't a model for going to answer everybody's questions. I'm looking at the table and seeing four of us at least who have direct contacts with about 2 or 3 or 4, in my case, all 3 members of Parliament, others may be the same, and half a dozen others. So we feel well connected, but I don't think that's true of most members. It's a real problem for most of the party membership, and I think that does need to be addressed, as you suggested.
Excellent, excellent.
Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy your next webinar. I know we're all back to back to back.
Talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye. I know last night or yesterday I was on Zoom from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 11 o'clock at night. I had time to take the dog for a walk twice, and that was it. So we're all doing these back-to-back events now. Awesome. So are there other questions, or anybody want to comment? I'm not going to put anyone else on the spot, but if somebody wants to comment on that larger question as to what's going on in terms of organization and what you'd like to see in terms of communication, if you're hearing enough or not, or too much, or where you sit on that, I'd love to hear that. If you don't feel comfortable speaking on the screen, that's okay as well. I have put in the chat my website, which is www.judyngreen.com, and on there you can join the mailing list. You can reach out to me, email or phone number, and well, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah. And I hope to get over to New Brunswick at some point in the next month or so, but we'll have to see. I don't know. Nova Scotians are still really skeptical about anybody even driving out of province. I know we have our Atlantic bubble, but people are quite protective of our very low incidence of COVID right now. We don't have any active cases, but that could change tomorrow. We've had a few pop up here and there. So how are you guys feeling in New Brunswick about that?
I don't think we've burned any Nova Scotia cars yet.
Oh, this is good. This is good. Krista and I did a short 2-day road trip just around from where I live down around Yarmouth and up through Shelburne and Bridgewater, and then over to Wolfville area, and then back down through the valley. And when we were in Peggy's Cove, somebody who had, I think, Illinois license plates had a big sign in the back of their car. We've completed our 2-week self-isolation. Like, it was almost like they didn't say, please don't slash my tires, but that was kind of the feeling that you got from it, because people have been quite militant about anyone coming from outside, which is, you can understand how scared they are, but it's not a good way to be. It'll be nice when we are being able to be our friendly maritime selves again. Excellent.
So if that's it, I'd just like to thank you for doing this. We've found it very informative, as with all the other candidates. So, so we just want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And thank you all for your time tonight. I know there's many things I'm sure everybody has on their calendars to do these days. It seems like there's more to do while we're in COVID isolation than when we had previously. So excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just going to end the recording now.